everybody. So it's been a while. I do apologize. I did try to record this last week or the week before, and it did not work. Craziness, but we're going to try it again. So we are now on chapter 4 of Brick by Brick, and this is about engagement. So something that we are working on right now at Southridge. And so there's some good tips in here. So it starts out with one of my favorite educational quotes is about effective classroom management. The most effective form of classroom management is engagement. As we know, if the kids are engaged and interested, classroom management is easier. It also says the quote also encourages engagement rather than compliance to procedures or obedience to rules, which are far less effective than actual engagement. And I think this is especially true today. Like it used to be that, yeah, people follow the rules because they follow the rules. And that's just not a thing anymore. Everyone, including adults, want to know why. Like, why do I have to do that? How does that affect me? And those kinds of things. And so students are the same way. And so if we can work on that engagement piece in the classroom, then hopefully that is going to effectively build your classroom management. So it starts with relationship building, as we know. And I did love this quote. It says, to build is to construct, make, create, and assemble. Implicit in these terms is time and effort, right? So it takes time and effort to build relationships. And I did like that it talks about creating and assembling, right? So those are the words that helps us to build a relationship. And as we know, when they are supported and when they feel supported and liked, it is a foundation to their growth and it supports academic success. So here is a quote that states, when students feel supported, they're more likely to engage in learning and have better academic outcomes. This is by Terenia Kaufman. She adds, when students have positive interactions with teachers, they have fewer behavior problems. Students who feel cared about by their teachers engage in challenging academic activities, stay on task in their classroom, exhibit pro-social behaviors, are genuinely happy to see their teacher, meet or exceed their teacher's expectations, and generally work harder than those who do not feel cared about by their teacher. And I know I have seen that in my classroom too. And sometimes those relationships are really difficult to build with some students, but just a little bit of effort can sometimes go a long way. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort, as we know. So there's a big list of things that positive teacher-student relationships have been shown to do. They increase cognitive engagement in the content. They enhance problem solving and critical thinking skills, increase a teacher's instructional monitoring in the classroom, increase a teacher's likelihood of checking in with students. That includes scaffolding learning and providing constructive feedback, improves the teacher's confidence in their students' abilities, and improves general teaching performance. So both ways. So when you have good relationships with your students, it helps them improve, but also helps the teacher improve. And it says a wonderful byproduct of positive teacher-student relationships is that teachers experience higher motivation, effort in teaching, engagement, general well-being, and confidence. And it also talks about building relationships with parents and guardians. It's also important. I am not as good at that, and something that is to me almost more difficult, because how do we reach out to parents in a positive way, and how do we have the time to do that? Always a question. And then has a couple of things. It says, learn your student's name in the first few days of school. And then after that, you want to learn things about them so that you can have positive interactions with them. Ask them how their football team is doing, or how, if they went rollerblading, those kinds of things. And then it does talk about building a relationship with parents. It says, it's as simple as a phone call or email home every couple of weeks. I suggest making contact at the beginning of the school year to start the relationship. The first contact is a greeting, review of your class content and expected behaviors, and a little about yourself. Let the parents or guardians get to know who is teaching their child for the next year. And once again, I think that's a whole lot easier when you have like one class instead of 5 or 6. But it is an important piece that I know I should get better at. Then it talks about greeting students at the door. Believe it or not, this is a huge positive that we sometimes overlook because it is so hard. We have so many other things going on, but something that I think could be with a tiny bit of effort could give us lots of payoff. It says, greet your students at the door when they come into the room. It sounds obvious, but it's often overlooked. Greeting students when they enter the room sets a positive tone. It establishes rapport, enhances classroom culture, and signals a welcoming atmosphere. A simple hello or how are you doing makes students feel welcomed and valued. A 2018 study finds that when teachers deliberately greet students, they're seeing significant improvement in academic engagement time and reductions in disruptive behavior. So just doing that one thing gives us so much back. So something I feel like we could do. And then it says, you could do a fist bump, you could say hello, you could give a high five, you could smile, whatever those are. Okay. So then it talks about expectations. Expectations are those actions you want and believe will happen. We learned about clear expectations regarding behavior. Oh, so in chapter 1, we talked about that. In this section, we'll dive into academic benefits of clear expectations. So having clear expectations helps with behavior, but it also helps with academics. Okay, so it's both. So it says, let's see. When teachers share their expectations for the class, students tend to perform in accordance with those expectations and believe they can achieve the work assigned. The students who receive challenging work and are praised for their effort and provided supports to succeed will grow academically. Conversely, if students are regularly given doable tasks, they will remain relatively stagnant academically. The results are the same in the sense that whatever you provide, praise, and support, the students will do. So, high expectations and then holding them to it. Okay, so for every assignment, task, or activity, make sure your academic expectations are exceptionally clear. If you find students are acting in a way that frustrates you or upsets you, then it's time to check your expectations for them because there is a disconnect somewhere. Then it says having clear routines and posting those. It says by posting the class objectives, you set the expectations that students are in class to learn something. And this is something that I did struggle with the last couple of years teaching. I feel like I got a little bit better at it, where I would try to really refer back to. We would have the goals for the unit posted and then the goals for the day. And as we were learning things, I would always refer back to the unit goals so that we can say, we're learning this so that we can get to this. And I feel like that made a big difference. I was not perfect at it by any means and definitely was still working on it, but I could tell the difference where the kids could see where we were headed. Okay, and then it talks about circulating the classroom. Circulating in the classroom allows you to monitor student progress, provide timely assistance, and foster a dynamic, responsive learning environment. Circulation enhances engagement, supports individualized instruction, and strengthens the overall classroom management. So when we're around helping our kids, this helps to help us know how the kids are doing. Are they getting it? Do they need help? Is everybody lost at a certain spot, right? But it also helps our students to know that you're there for them and that you're willing to help. A lot of times we'll just say, hey, let me know if you need me. Many, many times students are not going to ask for help if they need it. And so that's a hard one. And so by being there and circulating, you can see who needs help. One of the things that I started doing, and I don't know where I learned it, it was not from my brain, but I did the red and green like solo cups, and the kids can switch it. So red means I need help, and then I would come over and help them, and then switch it back to green. And so the kids didn't have to sit there with their hand up all the time, and I could just kind of circulate and tell who needed the help and help them as needed. And I feel like kids were more likely to use that system. It wasn't as obvious to other students, and everybody was using it. So it seemed to work pretty well. Okay, then talked about, let's see, using proximity. I know they already talked about that. Oh, proximity is coming up. Okay, so now he talks a little bit about how using your body where you are in the classroom makes a big difference. And this says, walking toward a person who seems disengaged will bring the student back. Approaching students who have questions to encourage their participation. Choreographing movement between boards and whiteboards and bulletin boards and devices to emphasize information or convey organization of information. So this was something that I really, really worked on because I found myself always standing in the front of the classroom. And that does kind of get boring. It does sometimes keep the kids from the back from not engaging. And walking around the classroom kept the kids more engaged and also kept me more engaged. And so I tried, that was something that I was really working on, is not just standing in front of the class, but moving around the classroom, having things on the walls to point to and refer back to, things like that. Okay, so then talking about proximity, it says, proximity control is a passive method to maintain the expectations you've set for the class. Instead of calling out the student, simply walk near them can often do the trick. Proximity control allows you to address behaviors promptly, maintain focus, and establish positive rapport with students. Proximity fosters a respectful learning environment, enhancing student-teacher relationships and overall classroom dynamics. So we should, I'm pretty sure we do, know the trick of like if a kid is talking or doing things, you just kind of walk near them to kind of like calm it down. So this is I did like this quote though. So the objective is to cause the student to act in the expected manner of the class, not to scare or intimidate. So we're not walking near the student to like hover over them or to like be the big bear. It's just like, hey, how you doing? And they usually will come right back in. So I think that's a good one. But this one I did not know about. So this one is called the walkaway. So this one is to help students who are talking to project more to the classroom. The walkaway is when, as a student responds to you, you slowly walk away from them while still actively listening. So you don't walk away back, you kind of back away. So as you're backing away, it helps the student, like they're talking louder so the whole class can hear. I liked that a lot. Never thought of that, but that totally makes sense. So I love that one. And then here's another tip: stand near, listen far. So this one is for groups, so like small groups are working and you want to try to make sure that everybody is on task. So if you walk near one of the groups, you're not really paying attention to that group. You don't need to because you're standing there, so they know you're there. What you're doing is you're listening to one or two other groups that are a little bit farther away, and you can even respond to something they are saying so they know you're listening. And so that is a great way to manage both groups, one close and one farther away. So I like that one. Let's see. And then he talks about using the randomizer. So basically making sure all students are being engaged, all students are part of it. There's lots of different ways to use randomizers. And he can give some examples of those. But one of the things to think about, it's not a gotcha for when they're not paying attention. It's actually a caught you being brilliant opportunity. So we want to make it a success, not a negative. And obviously that's going to be part of your classroom culture. Like, we're here to help each other, support each other. We're here to learn. And so making sure that the kids, and I think in just a minute here, it's going to talk about ways they can get help when they're called on. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so using randomizers, here's some ideas. So index cards, you can have the kids put their name on one side, maybe put something about themselves on the other side so you can learn more about them. And then you can like shuffle the cards and like choose. Dice, so everybody could have a number. You could roll the dice. A spinner with student's name on it, names in a hat. Popsicle sticks. I used popsicle sticks and I had numbers on the table, so I didn't have to make ones for different classes. And then that way I could pull and say like, the number like red number 5 or whatever. And then obviously technology, we have things like wheel of names. And then you could also have students choose. So if you call on a student, they'll call another student, which they usually call their buddies. So that's always great fun. So some of the things to think about is it's important for students to respond to a question. So we don't want them to get off the hook like, oh, I don't know. But there's ways that we can bring them back. So we're going to go into that in just a second. So he says we don't want them to escape. So here are some things that you can do. You can do phone a friend so they can call on somebody else. You can have a little phrase like I know not or I plead the fifth. And that's a way for them to just say, I actually don't know the answer, which I think is also okay. Like, I don't know. So you could help maybe talk them through it if needed, or come back to them later. Speaking of which, they can say, call me later. So come back the next time. You can also have somebody say, I volunteer as tribute, which basically means I'll answer for them. And then there's also bounce, which is like, I'm going to, say bounce, and then you go back in the hat for the next time. So lots of different ways you can do that. I also like to do the thing where if students, so a lot of times if I was going to draw, I would tell them that I was going to do that, and I would have them work with their partner and make sure they have an answer. So everybody has an answer before you start calling on people. And then if you call on someone and they still don't have an answer, I would like to say, okay, work with your table partner and I'll come back to you. And so go to somebody else so that way they still have to come up with an answer. So that was kind of what I used to do. Okay, and then there's another one called Pay Attention To, and he calls it PAT. And so basically all you're doing is just telling the class, you're going to read this thing or listen to this video or whatever, and you want them listening for something in particular so that their attention is specifically in a specific spot so that they know what they're paying attention to. So that is actually really helpful to keep their attention. And he says that PATs are a type of informal goal and goal setting, right? Here's your goal. Your goal is to listen for this. So that's kind of cool. Okay, then he talks about having a positive focus. Emphasizing strengths over shortcomings cultivates a supportive atmosphere, motivating students to make positive choices and promoting overall behavioral improvement. So one of the things that we've really been trying to talk about here at Southridge is those positives. What are we doing right? How can we catch them doing things right, giving them those successes? If you focus on positive behavior, it shows the students that you value those behaviors and not negative behaviors. When positive behavior becomes the norm, students will conform to that norm. Whatever is praised gets repeated. That's what happens. So I really, really liked this part, and this is something I learned the hard way. So it says it starts with assuming positive intent. So I'll give you an example. Something that I noticed is, I'm teaching, I'm doing the thing, and I hear a couple kids in the back like whispering, and I would be like, hey, you guys stop talking. I'm teaching up here. And then I come to find out many times when that happened, they actually were on task. Maybe they missed something I said. Maybe they were clarifying something. Maybe they're helping each other with something. Many times they actually were on task, and I was shutting that down. And so I started assuming positive intent. And instead of saying, hey, you guys stop talking, I would say, oh, are you guys okay? Did you have a question? Is there something I can help you with? And I wasn't saying it sarcastically. You have to say it genuinely, meaning, hey, did you miss something? And wow, that changed that so much, because if they were off task, it got them back on task without having to be negative. And if they were on task and had a question, I could help them. And so that's just a good example of things that I've learned. So when you assume that positive intent, there's a more positive way to address the issue. So it says, after assuming the student was not intentionally trying to derail the class, determine what they were actually trying to do, right? So that's where you're like, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? So I love that a lot. Just that reminder of assuming that positive intent can help us help a student in a different way. So your students. So having those conversations in a positive way. Okay, and then he starts talking about the purpose of your content. What are you teaching and why? And what I really liked is he talked about how, okay, I'm just going to read this part. Know why you teach what you teach. In other words, why are you teaching percentages or of mice and men or constellations? Frankly, we know that most students are not going to be mathematicians, writers, or astronomers. So why do all students need to learn these things? Students need to learn such content for two reasons. One, for general knowledge of the liberal arts, and two, to learn life skills to be successful in communities and broader society. So he talks about and I can't remember where this is in here, but he talks about how we look at the mission of our school. What are we trying to do in our school, and how the objectives or the learning targets, how do they help them get to the mission of our school? So here is a quote. It says, Mann, I don't know who Mann is, Horace Mann, says, Mann believed that when the poor or marginalized person can read, write, and do arithmetic, the country in which that person lives will endure. Unless its citizens are literate and educated, the country will fall. That, I believe, is the highest reason for why teachers are in the classroom teaching students, to educate the whole child to be a productive member of society, adept at navigating the different landscapes, social, political, religious, academic, and cultural. So this is why we're here, right? So he's saying, let's look at our mission statement for the school and then decide, okay, how are the things I'm teaching them helping them become a better citizen, be a good member of society, right? How does that happen? And so I'm actually gonna read you this uh, paragraph, and he's giving an example of looking at a standard for learning about the Earth's surface. So this is sixth grade teacher, and the standard is describe and give examples of ways in which the Earth's surface is built up and torn down by natural processes. So looking at, okay, we want our students to be better citizens. How does this standard get them there? So first he looks at the verbs, which we did when we looked at our standards, and the verbs are describe and give examples. So the content, knowledge is Earth's surface, built up, torn down, and natural processes. The teacher determines the skills of describing and giving examples are lifelong skills and more important than the content itself. So being able to describe things, being able to give examples, those are important, right? So that's where that emphasis is going to go. Okay, so let's see. So the teacher will spend more time and energy on those than on students recalling facts about the earth and natural processes. Those things are important, but the skills are more important. He also looked at the school's broader community to describe and give examples of the content, thereby making the content relevant. Finally, the teacher invites local men and women who've lived in the community for years to share their memories of the land and how it's changed. In this example, the teacher has addressed the standards while knowing the purpose of the standards, which is found in the mission statement of the school. So I really liked how, like, okay, so what really do we want our students to be able to do from our class? So loved it a lot. And then he talks about some of the skills that students need to succeed in the world and how we can look at our content and make sure that our content is helping them learn these skills. So there's a whole stack of them. So I don't know if I want to read all of them, but collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, cultural competency, financial literacy, flexibility, global citizenship, goal setting, informational literacy, initiative, innovation, leadership, media literacy, problem solving, productivity, professionalism, resource management, self awareness, social skills, systems thinking, technology literacy, time management, work ethic. All of those things are things we want our students to know. And we can teach those things as we're teaching our content. Question is, how do we do that, right? Looking at our content and figuring out, okay, can I teach time management during a project, right? So what would that look like? I love it. Okay. So, and then he goes on to capturing students' attention. As we know, it is an art. Capturing students' attention means stoking the fires of curiosity. And he used it in his example when we're like on Instagram or TikTok, and it'll say, watch until the end on a video. Well, now we want to know what's at the end, so we keep watching. So I thought that was a really good example of, grabbing attention. So how do we do that in our classroom? That is up to you, but he used examples of things like changing the tables around, having art supplies out, having your goggles and your lab coat on when students walk in. Like, what can we do that's like grabbing their attention? What's going to happen today? What's going to be different today? So that's kind of cool. This is the last piece. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here because the next one is teacher voice. So it's teacher voice and student voice, which kind of go together. So I'm going to stop here for now, and we'll do the next part later. Okay, thanks for listening.